D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick 1025. The game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingen, and David Janes here with you. Willie Donick will be joining us shortly. He is with the Nashville Predators, who are in Derek Mason's old stomping grounds, Detroit, Michigan.
The D?
As the Predators.
What up, Doe?
As the Predators prepare to take on the Red Wings tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Central Puck Drop, 5 p.m. pregame right here on 1025 The Game. So once Willie gets settled in the D, he'll join us on the program. Predators GM Barry Trotz will join us at 5 o'clock for our weekly discussion. Trevor Matich will join us during the 4 o'clock hour, which we will spend primarily on Vanderbilt at Tennessee, the main event this weekend at Neyland Stadium. But Derek,
yes,
do you like brain teasers?
Let's do it. Yes.
All right.
Who doesn't like a good brain teaser?
I like a good brain teaser. I want all of you listening. I want to turn your brains on. I want to get them engaged. So here's a little brain teaser for all of you. Derek, what happens when you combine a geological aggregate of minerals with its lowest form?
Have no idea. You tell me.
That would be rock bottom. And that's exactly what happened to the Nashville Predators last night at Bridgestone Arena. They lose 8 to 3 to the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. The Panthers scored the first goal 11 seconds into the game. Remember, the Predators gave up the first goal to the Avalanche 15 seconds into the game over the weekend. And it did not get much better from there. To the Predators' credit, they did tie the game. It lasted a minute. And then Florida poured it on. The Predators lose again. If my math is correct, that is 11 of the past 13, 2-9-2 for the Nashville Predators over the past 13 games spanning the past month. And I'm running out of ways to describe what I'm watching because I do watch the games. And we'll have Barry Trotz on in a couple of hours. And Barry Trotz is fond of the saying, it's his motto, the plan is in pen, but the path is in pencil. Well, if I were Barry Trotz, I would spill a whole bunch of whiteout all over that plan. Because I just don't see the vision. I don't know where this is going. And Barry Trotz has been quoted in a couple of places. He talked to Alex Daugherty of the Tennessean, challenging his players. He used some colorful language to do that. That quote went viral yesterday. Greg Wyshynski of ESPN.com talked to Trotz for a story that published this morning. I highly recommend it. And Trotz is saying a lot of the things that he says on our show every week. And I admire Barry Trotz's patience. I could use a lot more patience in life. I could use a lot more patience. I am the father of a 4-year-old. Sometimes my patience is tested. My son knows just how to push my buttons. So I could use more patience. But I am concerned, Derek, that Trotz's patience is transforming into stubbornness. The season isn't going anywhere. The Predators are, if my memory serves, 11 points out of a playoff spot 2 days before Thanksgiving. The Predators aren't making the playoffs. A lot of people didn't expect the Predators to make the playoffs. But look, to quote John Cena, the time is now. The time is now to pivot. The time is now to change course. I'm looking for the quote from Barry Trotz with Greg Wyshynski of ESPN.com. Here it is. Quote, this is Wyshynski. Speaking to ESPN before the Florida game. So the story published this morning, but Trotz did this interview with Greg last night or yesterday afternoon. Speaking to ESPN before the Florida game, Trotz said the next quote, 7 or 8 games are going to be a good indicator, end quote, if the time has arrived to start having tough conversations with veteran players or if Nashville's season still has a flicker of hope. That works out to be the second week of December. The Predators themselves are trying to avoid hearing the clock ticking on their own roster. He also talked to Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, Roman Josi. But at that point, Trotz said that the next, quote, 7 or 8 games are going to be a good indicator, end quote, if the time has arrived to start having tough conversations with veteran players or if Nashville season still has a flicker of hope. There's none. There is no hope for the rest of the season. There's not. So if I were Barry Trotz, I asked him this last week. I said, have any players with no movement clauses approached you about waiving them? And he said no.
Mm-hmm.
If I were him, I would be doing the opposite. I would be going to them. I would be going to Steven Stamkos. I would be going to Jonathan Marchessault. I would be going to Brady Shea. I would be going to the players with no movement clauses and saying, do you want to be here? If not, let's find you a place. Let's find you a place to go. Give you another crack at winning, because it's not going to happen here as quickly as you would like. So, look, it's not a great look
Mm-hmm.
when Trotz challenges his players, and that is the result that you see. And look, speaking of Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, they were benched last night. Their time on ice, the lowest of their respective Predators' careers, in Stamkos' case, when excluding injury, because there was one game he played like 9 minutes, but he left because he was injured.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take that game out, it was the lowest ice time of his Predators' career. Same with Marchessault. So they sat on the bench. They played under 13 minutes last night, both of them. So it's just not a great look. Derek, you know this. Coaches, GMs, the things that Trotz is saying to us,
Mm-hmm.
that he's saying to Alex Daugherty, that he's saying to Greg Wyshynski, are things that he's also saying to the players. Trotz is not staying silent with the players and then calling them out to reporters. Yeah. He's saying the same things. And you know this. This is my point. Yeah. You know this. You've played for plenty of coaches, and I'm sure GMs, who have called you out, called your teammates out in public. And that's a warning sign. It's one thing to do it behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. It's another to do it in public. And it's just not a great look when it happens. And then this is what happens last night.
Yeah. Well, fortunately enough for me, I've played with, 2 head coaches, well, 3. And I'm just counting the Titans in Baltimore, that didn't make it their business to throw guys under the bus. It was a me, meaning him, the head coach, or yes, we have to get better, or yeah, they know they need to get better, or we all need to get better. Very seldom do you see it. I think Barry's in a situation now where, and listen, I know you've read the Tennessean article, and many people out there have that are listening to us. He made it plain and simple. Like, listen, he knows how it looks, how it's supposed to look. See, this is sort of the good and the bad about, him being a former head coach and now a GM. The good is that you can see everything. The bad is that you can see everything and you know how it's supposed to look. And whereas we're looking at it, or the fan base is looking at it and say, well, just fire the coach. Just get rid of the coach, and that's half the problem. And Mary's looking at it like, no, that's not the problem. That is not even half the problem. The problem is the players are not holding up their end of the bargain. I know how it's supposed to look. I know, and he said in his art, I know when a guy has the puck a little bit too long. I know when he needs to pass it. I know how these things look because I've been a coach for so long. That's the good and the bad about it. The fans are just looking at it like, change Burnett. You'll get a bump. And he's like, no, because then that lets the players off the hook. That tells the players, oh, it was his fault, not your fault. When in actuality, listen, if you're a good coach, you're a good coach. But sometimes even good coaches can't get players to do what they're supposed to do. As hard as you may try, sometimes it just doesn't work out that way for whatever reason. And sometimes you have it for a season, sometimes it's for a game, but things like that happen. And the easiest, sort of the low hanging fruit, especially in hockey, is, well, we can't fire the players. We got to fire the head coach because the players got guaranteed contract, and we just can't move these guys all willy nilly. So we can just fire the coach, and hopefully that gives us that bump that statistically it says you will get from a percentage wise. But make no mistake, I believe if he felt it was the head coach, like it was the head coach is the reason that all these guys are being held back, he would fire him. I think by now he would have fired him. But he knows it's not the head coach, one. Two, he knows that those players are the players that he gave his head coach. So it's almost admitting fault for going out and getting these players that are not producing. You go get the grocery and I need to cook it. Well, you didn't get the right ingredients. Well, you thought it was the right ingredients, but those ingredients, they expired and they don't work as well anymore. They don't have that kick in that hot sauce or that pepper or whatever you put, cayenne or whatever you put in your stuff. It doesn't have that kick anymore. And if you fire the coach, and I'm not saying this is the reason you should keep him, I'm not saying that. But also you got to admit that, damn, I was wrong on two folds. I was wrong for getting these players to go with this coach. And then I was wrong for firing the coach to expect him to go to get the players right that are not there. It's just not going to work in this system. So I hope you understand from that standpoint. And again, I'm not letting Barry off the hook. I'm not saying that the Predators, I'm not holding up this flag and saying, I'm dying on this hill no matter what. But what I am saying is, listen, there's a lot to it. It's not as black and white as fire the head coach and things will get better. Because I do believe that, just like the Titans, if that was the reason, if I felt that was the reason and it would get the team going, I'd be like, yeah, you got to get rid of them. You got to go. But Barry doesn't believe that is the reason why this team is the team that they are today.
And I've said this many times, that if Andrew Brunette's boss was anybody other than Barry Trotz, he would have been fired by now. And I just, for example, Trotz last week brought up the Capitals of last season as a team that pulled off a successful blend. That's the word that Barry Trotz is fond of using, a successful blend. Well, the difference, at least to me, between those Capitals and these Predators are those Capitals had an emerging group of young core players. They had players in their early to mid-20s playing pivotal roles, putting up big points. The Predators do not have that. They don't. I'm looking at the young players who have played for the Predators this season. Matthew Wood, Fedor Svechkov, Luke Evangelista, Justin Barron, Adam Wilsby, Spencer Stastny. Do any of those players project to be core pieces? I don't know the answer to that. Like, at the moment, I don't look at any of those players. If you go to Bridgestone Arena to see a Predators game and you walk in through the main plaza on Fifth Avenue, there's a huge banner. And on that banner, Roman Josi, Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, UC Soros, Philip Forsberg. I don't see any of those players I just listed one day being on that banner. I don't. I think that they can be solid players, secondary players, important depth players, but I don't see Luke Evangelista, for example. He's the most seasoned of this group, I would say. Well, I guess Justin Barron too. But Luke Evangelista, I don't see Luke Evangelista becoming the next Philip Forsberg. I see Luke Evangelista becoming the next Craig Smith. And
But-
I think that, look, you need players like that on your team,
Mhm.
but the Capitals had young players who had 55, 60, 65 points last season. The Predators don't have that. So that's why it makes me feel skeptical that they'll be able to pull off this blend that Trotz has discussed.
But with their young guys, were they high draft picks? And if they were or were not, how long did it take them to develop to become the players that they are now?
It's a good question. So one of the young players on the Capitals, Alexei Protas, he is 24 years old. Last season, he had 66 points, 30 goals, and 36 assists. He was a third-round pick of Washington in 2019.
Okay. So it's
2025. So
7 years, 6 years, going on 7.
Connor McMichael was another young player who had a good season for the Capitals last season. 57 points, 26 goals, 57 points in 82 games. He was a first-round pick, 25th overall in 2019.
Okay.
So I see what you're saying. I think the problem is that a lot of the players that the Predators are really hoping can represent that next core, like Brady Martin or Tanner Molendyk or Igor Surin or Riker Lee, they're all like 18, 19, 20 years old. They're not ready for the NHL. So the problem is that to put a competitive team on the ice right now, which is what the Predators apparently want to do, you need those 23, 24, 25-year-olds, and they don't have those.
That's why they can't, okay, if you're asking, and I know many people are, Pred fans are saying, I'm done with this middle stuff. Just do a rebuild. Just do a complete rebuild. And okay.
I think fans would accept that at this point.
But a rebuild, and I know the hardcore or even sort of the middle pack of fans, the hardcore that knows everything in that middle pack that knows some things but they follow it. I'm sure they understand that this is not football. This is not basketball. This is not even baseball. That when you do a complete rebuild, you are rolling the dice and you are saying, I hope this at worst takes 4 years, maybe 5. I mean, at best takes 4 or 5 years. At worst, you're talking about, we talked about the Red Wings, we talked about the Blackhawks,
the Ducks, the Sharks.
Exactly. Yeah. All these teams that had to go into a rebuild for whatever reason, they had to go into a rebuild, and it took those teams years to come. And some teams are still dredging themselves out of it. So yes, you can do a rebuild, but fans, you got to understand, and I know a lot of them do, that, okay, this rebuild, unless you get you a guy that's drafted first or second overall and they just pop right away. And how many times does that happen? Not all the time. It does. We've seen it, but it's not like it occurs every year. But you're going to be waiting for a while before this team gets relevant, because all those young guys, there were young guys 5, 6, 7 years ago that are tearing up the league. They're going to be tearing up the league for the next 7, 8 years. So you got to play catch up. And you're not just going to turn it around. You got to be prepared. And when I mean prepared, I mean saying not every week coming on here and saying fire the head coach, fire the GM. You can't do that, because now you are in a full-fledged rebuild. And it's going to take you at minimum about 4 to 5 years.
615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll take your thoughts on the Predators, who lose 8-3 to the Florida Panthers last night. The Predators' 11th loss in their past 13 games, 2-9-2 over the past month for the Nashville Predators, who have fallen to the bottom of the league standings. We'll take your thoughts on that. But coming up next, I do want to do an exercise with the Predators and the Titans, because look, both teams are in the same spot. They're both the worst teams in their respective leagues. Here's the question that we are going to discuss on the other side. How confident are we in the potential of the Titans and Predators young cores? We'll get to that next. 615 737-1025. This afternoon on Totally Hits 93.3, catch MTSU men's basketball as the Blue Raiders take on McNeese State at 4 o'clock. Coverage is also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at totallyhitsnashville.com. D-Mace, Finnegan, and Donick 1025. The game we are presented by Bax Homeworks, which transforms kitchens, bathrooms, and living spaces into places you can't wait to come home to. Get a free estimate now at baxhomeworks.com. Willie Donick setting up. He'll be joining us shortly. Let's quickly get to some of your reaction on the Predators after they lost 8-3 last night. Steven from Clarksville says, put potential in one hand and scat in the other and see which one fills up faster. The real question is, how are all of the Predators' young talent currently doing in their respective leagues? It's a good question. I know Igor Surin, for example, is playing pretty well in the KHL in Russia. I'm going to be honest, Steven, and other listeners, I'm not paying too much attention to Predators prospects right now, but maybe I will do that for you. Mike says, I couldn't even tell you more than 5 players on the Preds and can't remember the last time I watched a game. There is plenty of great hockey I watch with the center ice package. I am an avid hockey fan. The Preds are a horrible product. And Rebecca, I think, speaks for a lot of Predators fans. As a season ticket holder, okay, hold on one second. Oh, as a season ticket holder, do I really want to spend $10,000 a year for the next 10 years waiting for us to rebuild? The product is awful, and I am very close to canceling the tickets. Elliot Freeman said to us, Derek, a couple of weeks ago, he used the term crisis of consumer confidence. And that is something that the Predators have to be wary of. And I understand that there are Predators fans who don't want to undergo a rebuild because they don't want to watch a losing team for years and years and years and years and not know how long it's going to take. But look what you've been watching lately. So I do think that it is a question that's worth discussing, something that the Predators should be worried about. Willie is here with us, but before we get to Willie, let's go to our phone line. Is this Kent, David? Nope, never mind. Never mind. There's nobody on our phone line. Let's welcome in Willie Donick. Hello, Willie. How are you?
This is Kent.
Oh, it says Kent on my phone.
I'm kidding. No, this is Willie. Hey guys, what's going on?
Did he really trick you?
No, it says Kent right there on the phone line.
Clark. This is Clark Kent.
I knew it was Willie.
Okay.
Had a voice. No, it's Kent.
So now that Willie's here, let's talk about what I teased before the break. This is the question we are going to attempt to answer. You can help us as well at 615-737-1025. How confident are we in the potential of the Titans and Predators' young cores? So let's start with the Titans. So, guys, here are the players I wrote down, and I may be missing some, but when I think about young cores, I'm thinking about players in their early to mid-20s. So as I read this list, I'm going to read this list, and then I'm going to go to our phones because we have a couple of phone calls here. But here are the Titans players I've written down. Cam Ward, Chim Dike, Alec Iamander, Tajay Spears, Gunnar Helm, Cedric Gray, Kevin Winston, and Tavondre Sweat. Am I missing anybody obvious that I should include in this group, this young core?
No, I think that's everybody.
Willie, anybody I'm missing?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
That's a decent list, and I'd say that since the start of the year, there's been encouragement with a handful of those guys, like the majority of those guys. Sweat's been the question mark, right? But you know, there's some decent growth, some things that you can hope to get better.
Willie, Derek and I were talking about this yesterday after you left the show, that if you squint hard enough, you can see the faint outline of a potential Titans core with Cam Ward, and he's been playing better recently. Of course, you want to see more. Chim Dike looks like he has the potential to be a jack of all trades, instant offense kind of player on special teams. We've seen flashes from Iamander. Helm is sure-handed. Cedric Gray is racking up a lot of tackles. Kevin Winston hasn't played too much. Tavondre Sweat, there are question marks. But if you squint hard enough, I think you can see the faint outline. Look, there are still positions that they are absolutely missing. They need a Jackson, Smith, and Jigba type of receiver. They need that alpha, clear-cut number one receiver. No disrespect to DK or Iamander, but they need somebody a little bit or a lot better than the two of them, someone with a much higher ceiling. They need a pass rusher. So there are still key positions missing. But Willie, do you agree with Derek and I that if you squint hard enough, you can see the faint outline of a young Titans core developing?
Yeah, it's a start. It's not like Winston is a really good example. I think they've got him healthy. He did a good job. So what do you have? You hope to find that out in the next month and a half or so if he can stay on there. You know, can some of these guys who have now scratched the surface, can they start doing it consistently every week? These are all stages that young players go through. But I think it's I don't know. I feel better about this group of rookies than I did last year's group of rookies.
Yeah, I think this group and the group that we talked about or are talking about. You said Tajay, right? You
I
said
said
Tajay,
Tajay
yeah,
Spears in
Tajay
that group.
Spears, and I know Tajay is this will be is going on his fourth year. I think this is his third or fourth year. Um, so he's not a first year guy who's like everyone else on this list, with the exception of Tavondre.
Third year.
Third year. So he and Tavondre are sort of the elder statesmen when you talk about this outline. But I think you do have guys that can play key roles in winning for you. Um, you know, I look at a guy like Kevin Winston Jr. Don't know why. He was a good player, a really good player at Penn State. Watched him a lot. He could be, this version of Kevin Byard, a guy that's drafted third, fourth round and ends up being the quarterback and a really damn good player, borderline Hall of Fame player, if not. So I think Kevin Winston has the potential to be someone that can trend that way. Jim DK, he leads everyone in all-purpose yardage, and he's showing that he can be a playmaker in this league and a valuable part of you winning. Obviously, Cam's getting better. Alec, he's been a rookie and he's had some good moments and some not so good moments, and the other guys are just they're improving. And this is what we wanted to see, and this is what Brinkert and Borgonzi talked about: drafting these guys, developing these guys, and then hopefully re-signing them, retaining them. Well, the last 2 years, the guys that they have drafted, they have been developing. And especially this year, you sort of now starting to get a faint outline of at least more of the offensive sort of core. Not to say that these guys outside of Cam are going to be, I'm not saying Alec or DK is going to be number one wide receivers or elite. They may be, but at least you can see an outline of some building blocks, some starters here, and then you just add to them. So I think the future looks pretty good. I know a lot of it hinges on whether Cam continues to develop, but I think the future, at least from an offensive standpoint, now the few defensive guys you still got to figure out Tavondre Sweat and his injury at the beginning, and can he slowly get himself back in the form that he was at last year. But I think they do got a nice little, starting sort of like this starter kit. It's sort of like this starter kit.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. I think that's
and you just got to add some people around them, some good, some elite players.
And Adam, doesn't that sound somewhat familiar with the Predators? Like, it's easier to find, but the Titans didn't even have what Derek is talking about. Some good complementary pieces, solid starters. Maybe somebody develops into somebody next level. It's easier to find that group than it is. You need that 5 to 7 really, really good players, star players. That's what they're missing at this point. And I think the Predators, as you look at their prospect pool, it's shaping up where I feel like they've got enough numbers that they're going to have some good players come up. But can they find on the hockey level those 2 or 3 really special players that make the difference every night?
One texter says, you forgot Strep. How could I forget Xavier Restrepo? But one texter did say, don't forget Peter Skoronsky and J.C. Latham.
Yes,
that is true.
Still young.
Absolutely
right. Those guys are still very young.
Yes, that was my fault. My bad. I should have absolutely included Skoronsky and Latham.
Offense, and when you and I don't know why I didn't think of it. I don't know why I thought of.
Yeah, I don't know why I forgot them either.
Players, yeah, like they were veteran players, but
Skoronsky and Latham should absolutely be on that list.
So when you start to really look at it, and I know JC is having his problems, and like, listen, something needs to flip, and maybe it was the injuries, and he's sort of getting himself back. But okay, but what you're starting to see now is they do have sort of building blocks. If you just want to say, hey, at least they got a left guard. If they choose to re-sign him, which I hope they will, and I think they will, you got a guy that's going to be playing for your franchise for another 4 or 5 years at left guard. And it may be longer than that. If your right tackle can get itself together, now you got a right tackle that is going to be playing just as long or even longer than your left guard. So now you got pieces in place. Now you just need to start adding to it. Again, when I say starter kit, it's not a bad thing. This is a team that didn't have much of anything outside of Jeffrey Simmons, like elite players. That's what I mean. So right now it is a starter kit, and the starter kit looks as if, you know, hey, listen, if I got stranded on the side of the road, I can live a couple of days with these things on, these things in the box, but eventually I got to start adding some substance around them.
The word I was looking for, by the way, was oversight. It was an oversight on my part
There we go.
to exclude Peter Skoronsky and JC Latham. Let's go to our phone line. Let's go to Bob first. Bob has been waiting patiently. Bob, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, guys. This question has to do with the current Predator roster.
Sure.
The people who stressed out last night. Where would you rate that roster in terms of overall talent compared to the rest of the league? And I'll listen to y'all's answer off air.
Thanks, Bob. At or near the bottom of the league.
The numbers don't lie. They are at the bottom of the league.
Yes, but
you
are
not what your record says you are.
Right, but when you're looking at just talent, even if he isn't playing well, Steven Stamkos is exceptionally talented, for example. But yeah, their center depth is the worst in the league, and I would challenge you to find another team that even comes close to having worse center depth than the Predators. Let's go to Jack on our phone line. Jack, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Yeah, here's my concern about the Predators. It is awful watching them like they are now. It would be less awful with some of the young players who are faster and more dedicated. I see lazy guys out there. I want to see these young punks roaring in there trying to kill somebody and make something happen. And if they lose, I'll be fine. I've been a season ticket holder since 1998. And I don't come. I got season tickets. I could probably go to less than half the games. I give them away, and it's because it's no fun to go because they don't put the effort in. And I read these things on different feeds and say we got 3 or 4 or 5 people that are going to be ready for the big league here this year, next year, whatever. Bring them in. They are as skilled. They're way faster. Everything. They just don't have experience. I think about the Colorado Avalanche 7 years ago. They played all them young guys, and they got swamped. They got boat raced, and they got experience, and they won a cup. What do you think?
Thank you for the call, Jack. Hold that thought. We will get to that because we are going to continue this exercise. I want your feedback. How confident are we in the potential of the Titans and Predators young cores? 615-737-1025. So the young core for the Titans we are including in this. Cam Ward, Chim Dike, Alec Iamander, Tajay Spears, Gunnar Helm, Cedric Ray, Kevin Winston, Devondre Sweat, JC Latham, and Peter Skoronsky. All players in their early to mid-20s. I don't think any of those players are over the age of 24. We'll get to the Predators coming up next, and we'll respond to Jack's call there on the other side. 615-737-1025. If you are looking for a great spot to pregame on Sunday before the Titans game, stop by John Bon Jovi's and pregame with 1025 The Game. JBJ's has the best food on Broadway, cold beer and cocktails, stunning skyline views, including 2 epic rooftops. For the pregame show is brought to you by Tennessee Brew Works and Old National Bank.
All right, let's talk F&M Bank. Banking made easy on purpose. They've got 20 locations in our listening area, and chances are there's one in your neighborhood or near your neighborhood, on the main street, on the main drag. Big town like Nashville, middle-sized town like Murfreesboro, smaller town like Springfield. And the important thread between all of those is they want to make your financial burden easier. They want to build a relationship with you. You want to know the person you can call right away if something comes up for you in your banking for your needs, whether it's for you personally, your family, or maybe even your business. They've got you covered. MyFMBank.com is the website where you find that location that's closest to your neighborhood. We take it to the bank every Friday on this show at 5:45, and it's brought to you by F&M Bank, banking made easy on purpose. Member FDIC.
Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning is having a coat drive today, now until 6 p.m. at the Seven Cedars Butcher Block on the Lebanon Square. So if you are nearby, they will be collecting new or gently used coats and jackets to help needy families. That's at the Seven Cedars Butcher Block on the Lebanon Square until 6 p.m. And speaking of Busy Bee, we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. So here's the question we are discussing. How confident are we in the potential of the Titans and Predators young cores? So the Titans players we've listed: Cam Ward, Chim Dike, Alec Iamander, Tajay Spears, Gunnar Helm, Cedric Ray, Kevin Winston, Devondre Sweat, J.C. Latham, and Peter Skoronsky. Here are the Predators players I have listed, and Willie, you can tell me if I've missed anybody obvious. Brady Martin, Igor Surin, Tanner Molendyke, Matthew Wood, Fedor Svechkov, Luke Evangelista, Justin Barron, Adam Wilsby, and Spencer Stasny.
I think you've hit a wide range. You've hit guys from, I think, 18 to 25 years old.
I have.
I would probably add a few more guys.
Sure. Such as?
In there. Well, I didn't list them. I'm looking at Milwaukee's roster right now. But let's just say you've got
you could throw Zachary LaRue in there, for example, or Joakim Kemmel in there, for example.
Oh, yeah. No question. Those guys are first-round picks.
Yes.
22 years old, a lot younger than Wilsby and Barron, as you mentioned. So, yeah, I wasn't cross-checked. I didn't have my own list, but
fair enough.
Let's focus on, I think, what is staring in front of them right now, and it goes towards what Jack asked right before the break, and that is the direction they're going right now, barring an enormous 180 that it's harder and harder to see each week that goes by.
Thank you, by the way, for saying 180 and not 360. I appreciate you actually getting it correct. Not that I doubted you, but he did a complete 360. You mean he's back where he started from? No, so I'm glad you said 180. Thank you.
Common mistakes. I probably made that mistake 4 or 5 times before I got it corrected in my brain. But I think that this is. I think I'm planning on. I would like to hear Barry Trotz's perspective on where he is on this, because really for the last couple of years he's been trying to build the next core. And everything is riding on that group that you've talked about and probably a couple other names that we overlooked. But not many of them are ready to contribute right now. So what Jack is kind of saying is, look, throw them in there. Even if they're going to lose, just let them get experience. And I think that's a tricky thing if you put too many in there. And I think we've seen that there are some guys that you lose in the process because they lose confidence, they don't get into good habits, and they lose a lot of games. They don't learn how to win. So there's got to be a process of making sure you don't rush anybody, even though the team on the ice in the NHL level, everybody's clamoring to play the young guys. And B, if you do that, don't put anybody in a position to fail. Like I think Matt Wood is the guy that's a really good example right now. He's only 20. He was sort of ahead of the curve. He had a great training camp, even though he got hurt. Then he's had some success in some of these games. Now he's cooled off a little bit. So do you stay with him? How long do you stick with him? And does he need to go back down before he comes back up? Fedor Svechkov, who's, I think, 2 years older. What is he, 22? Adam, he's a guy that I still don't think they've given up on, but he's an example of a guy that they probably asked too much of.
He's 22, yes.
He's only 22. He's a college senior. And he's been around for a while, but he's still a guy that I think could still develop, but he's being thrown out there every night. They've moved him down to the 4th line. He's actually played better because they've taken some off of his plate. So that's the dilemma that I'm seeing right now, is you have to be careful on just throwing all young guys, even though the fans are clamoring for it. They'd like to see new guys. You're going to lose with young guys rather than what they've been playing with, but there's a balance there.
What Jack's call reminded me of is the end of the Predators 2022-2023 season. The team missed the playoffs that season. That was the season the Predators traded Matthias Ekholm and Nino Niederreiter, easy for me to say, and Mikhail Granlund and Tanner Jeannot. And I think Matt Duchene was hurt down the stretch, Ryan Johansson, Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi, and even Barry Trotz will tell you, the Predators were playing with an AHL caliber lineup for the final quarter of the season. But those players played hard. And the Predators did not give up. I believe they were eliminated from postseason contention after game 81. So they were there until the very end. UC Saros did do a lot of the heavy lifting, but there were a lot
he was the reason that they were able to win.
Yes, but there were a lot of young players getting experience, and I remember fans being interested in that last quarter of the season when the Predators could have easily folded up shop. There was excitement about some fresh players. The veterans were either traded or hurt. I think that's what Jack is talking about in the call that he gave us in the previous segment. I think there are a lot of Predators players who want them to play the kids. And it's easier said than done, but that's what I think a lot of fans want.
I mean, if you're going to go out, if you're going to do that, then it's more than just putting those guys out there. It's okay, who do we switch out? Who do we move around? I would like to see some of the younger guys play. You figure I'm sort of, I guess I'm sort of split, because do I want them to play? Yes, because I think they're going to gain experience. But in playing them and them gaining that experience, will they benefit from it? Or will it, set them back even more? I guess that's the sort of the dilemma that you're in as a head coach and a GM, is how long is too long to keep them up here? How long is it going to take for me to see that, okay, they can play at this league? I can keep hearing it for the whole year, because some nights are going to be really good. Some nights they're going to be really bad. But how long do you hold on to that young player and say, well, I'm going to keep him in the lineup because we are not a bad team. We are not a good team. I'm going to keep him in the lineup to get experience. Well, again, is that experience helping him, or is that experience hurting him at this point?
That was the discussion we were having, Willie, when Brady Martin made the Predators opening night roster. He played in 3 games. He didn't play a lot when he played. He didn't play on that first long road trip of the season because the Predators wanted to keep him out of disadvantageous situations. And there certainly is a school of thought that, although it may seem, hey, let's just throw them into the deep end without water wings on and they'll sink or swim, it doesn't always work out when you do that. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And that is certainly something that is a philosophy in hockey and probably most sports as well that coaches and GMs have to grapple with.
Sure. And I know they're grappling with it every day right now. Inevitably, you're going to see more. Barry Trotz told us last Thursday that you're going to start to see, and he named a lot of the names. Reed Schaefer is probably the guy right now that has had the best start in Milwaukee, and he's at the age where he's probably had enough seasoning. Now he's had some injuries in his growth that have probably slowed him down some, but I think he's on the verge. I think I would go out on a limb and say before it's all over, they're going to take a look at him and see what he's got. He's the rare guy who's got some size and some skill as a first-round pick. I'm not saying he's going to be a star, but I think he could be a piece of a winning team. But that's what you have to find out. So I think everybody's anxious, because when you have the same guys going out there each night and it's not happening, it's certainly frustrating for a fan. It goes without saying, right? Last night it probably reached its high point of the year in frustration level.
Chris on Twitter says, in terms of confidence level in the Titans and Predators young cores, Chris says Titans 4 out of 10, no depth and a ton of holes, but I feel like they might have their franchise quarterback. Predators 1 out of 10, no proof they can develop young players, specifically forwards.
Okay, Willie, this is the question that I want to ask you, because obviously I'm coming from a football world, and when you talk about development, you see it firsthand because they're playing each and every week in some form or fashion, or they're not playing, so they're not developing.
Derek, you ask this
Uh-huh.
question, and then we'll get Willie's answer on the other side. But
Yeah.
give him the question.
But when you're talking about these young players, and people are saying, well, we need a coach that's going to develop them. Do they understand that, a lot of this development starts at the lower levels before they even get to the NHL? Because you're going to keep getting better once you get there, but they're bringing you up because you are developing at that lower level, so much so that they can bring you up. So it's not, to me, and if you feel different, please let me know on the other side. To me, it's not so much, the head coach developing them at this level. It's who's developing them underneath the NHL. So when they get here, they're more ready to go than anything, because a coach can't sit around trying to develop guys and we got a game every other day.
Willie can answer that question on the other side, 615-737-1025. We will also get into Vanderbilt at Tennessee, our first look at this incredibly important matchup between these two state rivals. We will get Willie's response to Derek's question, and then we will look ahead to Vanderbilt and Tennessee this weekend. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Speaking of that game, it's Saturday's college football game of the week. 2:30 p.m. on 102.5 The Game and 94.9 The Fan, and it is presented by Twin Peaks Restaurants and Circus Sportsbook Kentucky. Coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025. The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, Willie Donick, and David Janes here with you. Corey Curtis just gave you a shout out of sorts on X. Derek, he said, Derek Mason holds the Titans record for all-purpose yards in the season with 2,690. Jim Dike is on pace for 2,720. Needs to be said, that's a 17-game schedule. Mason did it in 16. Still, he's having a great year.
He is having a terrific year. And that's why, to me, because he's a jack of all trades, he's still learning how to be a wide receiver, and he has a ways to go. But he's excelling at those other areas that they have, put in his care. And I'm talking about punt and kickoff return. So the young man is doing a wonderful job. And, if he gets it, then great for him. That means you can only look forward to bigger and better things the next following year.
So before we shift gears to Vanderbilt and Tennessee, Derek, before the break, you asked Willie a philosophical question about development in the NHL. Do you want to repeat that question?
Is it more so what it boils down to, Willie? Is it more so on the head coach once they get to that level to develop the player, or is a lot of the development done beforehand? Because they have so much other stuff they got to worry about. Trying to develop one guy amongst all these other guys, it's going to be tough.
It's a great question. And we've discussed the weakness of NFL development, especially at the quarterback position, because you don't have the minor league system to where you could put a guy in a position like when you put, let's just say if Fedor Svechkov was playing in Milwaukee right now, they could put him out there. And it's not the end-all, be-all that Milwaukee wins every night. They're trying to win, but the development takes precedence. And so the development, to answer your question, I think the majority of it is done at the minor league level, ideally. And that's where sometimes I think if you rush guys to the NHL and you're trying to develop them and playing against the best people of the world, you get the experience, but can you develop? Because you're right. It's now, if you sort of just understand, hey, look, this is a rebuild. Winning every night, we know is probably not going to happen. It's a last resort. You didn't want to do this, but this is where they are. Then maybe you can do a little developing while you play at the NHL level. And that's what's tricky. I think they're going through, and it's not by choice, but it's just going in that direction where they may shift a little bit more in that direction. And more so than we're trying to win every night and be as competitive as we can for the veteran players. But the veteran players have had their chance to this point, a quarter of the season in, and the results are what they are. They're at the bottom. So they're running out of time. It doesn't have to happen today, but it's clearly moving in that direction.
Let's focus on the gigantic matchup at Neyland Stadium this weekend. Vanderbilt at Tennessee. By the way, the line has moved since I wrote down what it was previously. When I wrote it down, it was Tennessee minus 2.5 on ESPN Bet. Now it's Tennessee minus 3.5 on ESPN Bet. So take that for what it's worth. But let's start here. Let's remind everybody what Diego Pavia said during the offseason on Bussin' with the Boys about Vanderbilt and its place in the college football playoff landscape, or the college football landscape, I should say, in the state of Tennessee.
Vanderbilt's going to run Tennessee after this year. Like, this is going to be the new staple of, like, college football. It's going to happen here at Vanderbilt.
Do any of you and the boys ever, like, talk about that? Like, we got to be the state school.
Well,
we're in Nashville, Tennessee. We're in the Music City. Like, we need to be the brand of Tennessee.
Everyone wants to come to Tennessee because of Nashville. So they want to come to Nashville, so Vanderbilt. And then when we have, like, the most money in NIL, like, why not come here? So, like, we literally just have to win this year and throughout the rest of the year. It'll take care of itself.
You think Vandy will have the most money in the game? Or
I think we'll be up there.
Yeah.
But, like, it's Nashville.
Yeah, there's a lot of big hitters around here.
Yeah.
They just need a team to believe in.
Yeah, that's all they need.
They need Diego Pavia.
They need Diego Pavia. And you know what? Diego Pavia, so far, has delivered. That interview was recorded before the football season. And when he said that and Bussin' with the Boys released the podcast, people thought Diego Pavia was nuts. When Diego Pavia said what he said on Paul Feinbaum about our goal is to compete for a national championship, to win the national championship, people thought he was nuts. But here's what I love most about this game. And we'll get into the nuts and bolts of it with Trevor Maddich in the next segment because he'll know a lot more about this than I do. But here's the thing I love about this game in particular. Strip away the names for a moment. Strip away Vanderbilt, strip away Tennessee. Team X versus Team Y. And it's still a big game. Team X at 9-2, going on the road in a conference game with a chance to punch its ticket to the college football playoff. It's still a big game. Then you put the names back on. The magnitude of the rivalry. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And Will Leach of The Athletic wrote a column the other day with the headline. It wasn't about this game in particular. College football playoff bids are great. Making your rival miserable is still better. And I completely agree. And I imagine that's where Tennessee fans are right now. Y'all know how big of a Duke fan I am. Born in Durham, North Carolina, came out the womb at Duke University Hospital and put into a Duke onesie almost immediately. I was born into it. And I despise the University of North Carolina. And it brings me just as much joy to watch Carolina struggle as it does to watch Duke win. Although Duke did beat Carolina in football over the weekend, and that was pretty great. But Duke could win the Tiddlywinks National Championship against North Carolina, and I would still love it more than anything in the world because I hate UNC. And I know that's how a lot of Tennessee fans probably feel about Vanderbilt. Tennessee fans hear Diego Pavia say what we just played. They've probably been stewing about it for the past couple of months, especially as Diego Pavia has backed up his talk, right? And those clips are starting to resurface now that the game is here. I love it. I know Coach Willie over there is freaking out, but as someone who does not have a dog in this fight, Willie, Derek, I'll start with Derek. This is what makes this matchup so fantastic. It's the magnitude of the game itself plus the rivalry aspect. I cannot wait to watch this game on Saturday.
And I know, hindsight is 2020, but when you're listening to Diego, you just hear the confidence. Like he just said it again, like, and I know this was before the season started, but even then it was like, it's this confidence and this calmness in his voice. Like we're going to run, and it's matter of fact about it. He's not laughing. It's not like, yeah, it's a matter of fact. He didn't stutter. He basically, he said it as if they've been running the town for years prior, and the last 3 or 4 years have just been a hiccup. And now they're back to running the town again. That's how he sounded before the season. And it's come true, at least up until now, but they got to finish the job off against UT. But what he said is coming into fruition.
Willie, before you answer that, here's a perfect example of what we're talking about. One texter says, "Have a great day, fellas. I can't do the Pavia crap. Dude is such an incredibly annoying guy. I've never said this in my life, but go Vols."
Why are y'all annoyed by a guy that he's been a part of a turnaround?
The Vols fans are salty about this. That's what makes this game so great.
It's like, just be happy for him. Y'all could still want to win, but be happy for the young man. I guess they're mad that Vandy are not doormats anymore.
Maybe. How does Coach Willie feel about all of this?
Well, at least this season.
I'm going to give you just Willie, the Nashvilleian, the 30-year vet.
Okay.
Sports talk. I think it's a little bit of the intrigue is that Vanderbilt has pushed the envelope because most years, let's be totally honest, when you say, the Will Leach line, what was the line again? You live to
college football playoff. College football playoff bids are great. Making your rival miserable is still better.
That is 100% true for Vanderbilt fans against Tennessee. It is not as nearly as much for Tennessee fans against Vanderbilt. They're having to sort of muster this up, right? They like to talk down to Vanderbilt fans to say, "Oh, you're not our rival. We're your rival, but you're not really our rival." And of course, we had fun with the fact that Vanderbilt had like 91% when you could choose which teams you want to play as your rivals. So it's there. quite honestly, this rivalry for long stretches has been one-sided. So that's what's intriguing about this is Vanderbilt's going in there with something really significant to play for and going in there with swagger. And so it may be unlike any Vanderbilt-Tennessee game we've seen. And then you add the characters like Pavia to the mix, and you've got something right out of a movie, right? It's much-watched TV. I would think there's a lot of people that are not Vanderbilt or Tennessee fans that are like, hey, I got to watch that. I got to see how that goes. But I'll do you one further on the brashness of Pavia. Clark Lee, 3 years before he ever had Diego Pavia, went to the podium when he first got the Vanderbilt job, and he said, I want to make this the best program in the country. And people almost laughed him right out of wherever that was, Birmingham or Atlanta, or maybe even Dallas. I don't know where it was. They rotated around now. But Diego Pavia is echoing the vision that Clark Lee has had since he's got there. He's believed that if you back them with the right resources, he can make that a very special program, and you can play with the big dogs that are in the SEC. So there's a long way to go in the process. They don't have the same financial resources that other teams in the league have. It's not even close yet. They're closing the gap. They have enough to compete with. They've got to be smart with it, and they've got to keep growing with their resources. So it's evolved a lot, but there's still a long way to go. But this has got all kinds of intrigue. From a sexiness game, it's 10 out of 10.
By the way, the last time Vanderbilt went to Neyland Stadium and won was 2017. The Commodores won 42-24. Kyle Shermer, 4 touchdown passes. Ralph Webb, 163 rush yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's been, I know they don't play there every year, but it's been a minute since Vanderbilt went to Neyland Stadium and won. We know what is at stake in this matchup. If Vanderbilt wins to go 10-2, they'll put themselves in a good position to qualify for the college football playoff. It sounds like they'll probably need some help, but if they're 10-2, they will absolutely be in the discussion for the college football playoff. And again, we'll get into the nuts and bolts with Trevor Maddich coming up in just a matter of minutes. But Derek, you have 2 of the highest scoring offenses in the country in this game. Tennessee averages 42.3 points per game. That's 4th in the country. Vanderbilt 38.9. That's 9th in the country. Vanderbilt better defensively, at least by scoring defense, 21.7 points allowed per game versus Tennessee's 27.3. But are you anticipating an offensive explosion in this game, which the statistics would suggest, or are you expecting a different type of game on Saturday?
Every defense that Vanderbilt has played against, they've managed to, do more than what was thought of them to be able to do. Obviously, they're averaging, close to 40 points per game, if not more than 40. So
Tennessee is averaging 42.3 points per game.
Is
38.9.
Okay. I think this is going to be a shootout. I really do. I see it as, because I don't think Tennessee has the defense that, say, a Texas had. And Texas was able to put up some points, but Vandy ended up coming back and making it a close game. I don't think they have a Texas defense, but I think Tennessee's offense is more consistent, and I think they are more lethal than Texas's offense, at least this season they've shown. So I do expect them to score, and I do expect Vandy to score. It's going to come down, and Clark Lee said it. Basically, it's going to come down to the defense, and he expects his defense to continue to, go out there and to do the things that they need to win ball games. They are a bend but not break defense. As they get closer to the red zone, they're starting to tighten up. They've been opportunistic. So, to me, it's not going to be the points. It's going to be who's going to make that 1 or 2 plays defensively, because when you have high-scoring offenses like this, the bad part about it is there's not many defenses in the country that can stop it. There's not many. And even Georgia's defense, they're damn good. Ohio State's defense, they're damn good. But eventually, somebody's going to put up some points against them too. When you have when you have a league like this, there's 2 or 3 possessions in a game that the defense must come up with a stop. And whoever does that, Vandy or Tennessee, that's who's going to win the game, because I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. It's just who gets that one or two plays at that one or two critical times on defense.
Willie, go ahead.
I think you're dead right, D Mace. I think it's you have to sort of redefine what good defense is when you play a team like Tennessee, because you're going to give them some points. So it's key stops at key times, field goals instead of touchdowns, couple of turnovers. But the one thing I'm really intrigued with Vanderbilt's defense, we know they are more bend but don't break. We've seen them be vulnerable, throwing the ball out on the perimeter with a lot of those 3-by-1s, those quick wide receiver tosses. Can they? Because Tennessee's really good at that, right? And they can hit you over the top. So can Vanderbilt do better than they did, say, against Texas and Auburn, who hurt them? Now, Kentucky didn't hurt them, but the Tennessee's got more weapons, right? So Vanderbilt's got to do well in that area. The other part is the tempo. Vanderbilt likes, even though they score all those points, they try to do it with making you drive 10 or 12 plays when you have the ball, and they will take time and go 10 yards at a time and milk the clock when they can when they have the ball. Do they try to play tempo against Tennessee? Or have they found these last couple of weeks that, hey, just playing a regular tempo is fine. They're outgunning teams. I'm curious about that. Do they try to make it a lower possession game? Or do they just sort of play it straight and just say, you know what, Tennessee's going to play quick, and we just have to try to beat them toe-to-toe?
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Huge game this weekend at Neyland Stadium. 615-737-1025. Trevor Maddich will join us coming up next. We'll get his breakdown of this matchup and what we can expect from yet another college football playoff rankings reveal. We'll talk to Trevor coming up next. 615-737-1025. The MTSU Blue Raiders will take on New Mexico State. Speaking of Diego Pavia, this Saturday at 2 p.m. Catch all of the action on Totally Hits 93.3, with coverage also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at TotallyHitsNashville.com. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick 1025. The game we are presented by Bax Homeworks. Remodeling done right. Get a free estimate now at baxhomeworks.com. Let's go to our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, and welcome in our friend, newly minted BYU Hall of Famer, Trevor Maddich, who is brought to you by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters. Trevor, of course, we are discussing the upcoming matchup between Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Here's my question to you. In which area can Vanderbilt exploit Tennessee, and in which area can Tennessee exploit Vanderbilt?
Well, actually, from a standpoint of most, I don't want to say soft, but where you can exploit on both sides is the passing defense. Only Arkansas gives up fewer. No, I'm sorry. Let me say that again. Only Arkansas gives up more passing yards per game than Tennessee and Vandy. They're right down there at the bottom of the SEC. Now, part of that is because their offenses are good and teams throw the ball a lot. When you look at yards per passing attempt, they're still, though, about mid-tier, mid to lower tier. And so I think both sides are going to try to throw the ball. And I think both sides are going to expect that the quarterback of the other team is going to throw the ball, and they'll figure they'll have to keep up and attract me. Now, there are things I think that Vandy can do to kind of mitigate that a little bit. But ultimately, I would be stunned if there aren't a ton of footballs in the air in this game.
Trevor, if Vanderbilt wins this game at Neyland Stadium, the Commodores will be 10-2. And a lot of us think that should be good enough to warrant inclusion in the college football playoff. But it seems the general consensus is that even if Vanderbilt wins, the Commodores are going to need help. How much help do you think they would need if the Commodores win this game and are at 10-2 at the end of the regular season?
Well, I think a ton of help, Willie. I think it's a real problem for. Oh, I'm sorry. Was this Adam?
Yes, that's okay.
Yeah, sorry, Adam. I thought it was Willie for a second there. You're channeling Willie's voice. You should do some impersonation work. That was really good. But I think that they'll need a ton of help. And the reason is that, Vandy is sitting there right now in the AP at number 12. We'll see what the committee ranks them. But either way, they're outside of that top 12. And the problem that they have is that getting into the top 12 is not enough. They'll have to be in the top 10 to be really safe. And the reason is that they're going to be jumped. 11 and 12 in the final ranking are going to be jumped by the Group of Five champion and the ACC champion. And so unless it's by some miracle Miami, which, still is Miami's outside the top 12 now. And so to be safe as an at-large team, you've got to be in the top 10. And when you look at who's in the top 10 right now, Alabama's there, but Alabama beat Vandy head-to-head. Notre Dame's there. They're number 9, and I think the committee loves Notre Dame. They've already decided that Notre Dame with 2 losses is better than Vandy with 2 losses. So the committee's already made that decision. And then Oklahoma, they have LSU, but if they lose to LSU, they're at number 8. The question is, will they fall all the way behind Vandy? And it's very possible, but then Vandy would move up 1 spot. So you'd have to have multiple teams up there lose that are in the top 10. And if you look at 10, 9, 8, you've got Alabama, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and then Texas Tech after that. And so in Oregon's up there. It just seems like there would be a requirement of not only Vandy winning at Tennessee and looking really good doing it, looking like a playoff team doing it, which they could do, but also they would need multiple teams ahead of them to lose, because of the fact that the ACC champ and the Group of Five champ are likely to be behind them in the final ranking.
So, Trevor, what you're saying is this upcoming week is really the week where Vandy's going to gain some leverage. It's going to be it has to be this week with them winning and potentially other teams losing, because it seems like even championship weekend can't help Vandy if teams don't lose this weekend.
Right. Because, the committee, I think, has heard coaches talking about the unfairness of a team making a conference championship game and losing and being downgraded and dropped behind a team that didn't make their conference championship game and therefore wasn't at risk of losing. And I think you look at the ACC last year, SMU got beat by Clemson in the ACC championship game, and SMU had a roaring comeback in the fourth quarter, but they fell short. But the committee didn't downgrade them out of the playoff. And so SMU, having lost the ACC championship game, was in it anyway. And so the conference championship games, I don't know that the losers there are going to drop far enough to help Vandy. You know, what helps Vandy, though, now is that their losses are to Alabama and Texas, both of them on the road. Those are shaping up to be pretty good losses. And I think that the committee will take that into account. And then at Tennessee, if they're able to win there, that's a tough place to play, a tough place to win. And I think the committee would give them a lot of credit for winning at Tennessee if they're able to pull it off. But like you said, Derek, it also will require not just one, maybe two or more, maybe three teams ahead of them losing in the final week of the regular season. That means this weekend.
Now, you know, we talk about Vandy as a team and them, you know, still, even if they win, them not securing a place in a college football playoff, which, you know, is unthinkable when you come out the SEC and you're 10-2 and that's still not a lock to make the college football playoffs. But when you talk about individuals, Diego Pavia winning, potentially not just winning, but I'm saying first and foremost being in New York, does he have to have even with say one of those Heisman Trophy moments? Do you still think if they don't win this game, do you believe he should be in New York, or do you think he will be in New York?
I believe he absolutely should be in New York. I don't know that he's in position to win the Heisman unless he has a magnificent Heisman moment this weekend against the Volunteers. But I think he deserves to be in New York. I mean, the criteria for the Heisman Trophy is the most outstanding player in college football. And we tend to look at the stat monsters to justify that. But the truth of it is, Diego Pavia his stats have been great. But it's when he does things that are most outstanding. I mean, their superpower the last 2 years has been extending drives and keeping the opposing offense on the sideline. And that, to large measure, is Pavia finding the weakness in the defense and hitting it on schedule, or rolling around and running around and finding a weakness and then hitting that, or doing some miraculous thing that allowed him to extend a drive that kept the opponents on the sideline and possibly even ended in a score in those critical moments, those critical moments that matter most. And so I hope that the 900, I think there's like 900 and some Heisman voters, I hope they're paying attention to not just what Pavia does, but when he does it. And really in this game, he'll have another opportunity to do the same thing and exhibit that superpower, because this Tennessee offense, when it gets rolling against a vulnerable secondary, they're really hard to keep up with unless you don't let them onto the field. And that's really the key to the game for Vanderbilt overall. It's Pavia extending drives with plays that won't make the highlight reel necessarily, but that'll frustrate the Tennessee defense and keep the ball in Vanderbilt's hands.
Trevor Maddux is with us. Trevor, you read my mind. This is Willie, by the way. So I'm saving the best for last. I'm the anchor today. But so I think I'm hearing you say something I brought up right before you came on. If you're Clark Lee, do you go into the game trying to make it low possession? Because that is what they have done effectively before. And as you mentioned, it can frustrate Tennessee if it's done right. And I would think it would be a no-brainer a few weeks ago, but they've shown that they can play some up-tempo if needed, and they've been really effective. But would you go in thinking, let's try to keep the possessions down to a minimum?
I would think that, and especially because Clark Lee's a defensive guy. You know, defensive guys always think, okay, complementary football. And the first rule of complementary football is the offense stays on the field for a while so that the defense can rest, and then the offense strings together several first downs. So when you do punt, you put the other team deep. That's complementary football in the eyes of pretty much every defensive coach that's ever existed. And so I can see them trying to do that. And I think there's another reason why, Willie, that they would really want to do that. And that's because the last thing you want to do when you're in your meetings as a as a staff is to think, okay, we're about to play Tennessee, and I can't wait to get into a track meet with them. I can't wait to get into a big play contest with Tennessee's offense. Man, that's going to be super fun. That's not what they're thinking. They're thinking on defense, how do we win situations? In other words, how do we, during the course of a drive, limit big plays so they have to run a lot of plays, then win on first or second down, or when there's a penalty and it's third and long, now we get them off the field. You're thinking about those kinds of situations. And so I think Vanderbilt, again, you talk about Pavia's superpower. They lead the SEC in third down conversion percentage at about 52%. And so, I think they would lean into that rather than say, okay, our quarterback's good, their quarterback's good. Let's see who can put up the most points.
You hit on Pavia's superpower a couple of times. I think that's a really interesting question when it comes to the Heisman vote itself, because I'm wondering, you mentioned there's voters all across the country, and I do wonder how many can see that nuance, because you're right, his stats are startling, and just you put them side by side with anybody, they're really good. But when you add that extra note that the superpower, as you call it, is that you're trying to keep possessions away from the other team, I'm not sure the average voter will know that. That's what would concern me.
Yeah, and they won't, and that's what I worry about. I think most Heisman voters take it very seriously, but sometimes I fear that some voters were awarded the Heisman vote in a divorce by a judge. It's like, I wonder what some people might be thinking. These are especially the people that send in their ballots before the final games are played. And they have to send in the ballot once they've seen all the games played. I mean, that happens for some of them. And I wish really if that happened, that unless they were traveling outside the country and stuff like that, that they would have that taken away from them. But that's a different thing. I have ideas on how they could change the Heisman voting procedure that I think would make it more credible. But at the same time, people don't look at that third down percentage. It's just not a stat you look at. They do look at completion percentage, and Pavia is about 72%. Most of the time, when you complete that many passes, it's because you're throwing the ball at or near the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage much of the time. But Pavia is averaging about 9.5 yards per pass attempt, and that means he's throwing downfield plenty. And I think when you look at kind of that balance as well, if you're a voter, there are reasons you can say that Diego Pavia, even though he may not have the most yards and although he's up there. I mean, he's pushing 3,000 yards right now. He's just under. But, if you're looking at the things that people do in the critical moments, Diego Pavia, one of the reasons the third down percentage is so high is because Pavia doesn't have a whole lot of incomplete passes. When he throws it, it's 72%. One of his guys is catching it somewhere, and usually catching it for a nice gain. And so these are things that I think voters need to pay attention to. Diego Pavia he's not just the MVP of the team. I think for the last 2 years, you can make a case that would be hard to break, that Diego Pavia is the MVP in all of college football. That no player was more valuable to his team than Diego Pavia was to Vanderbilt the last 2 years. And the way he's elevated the franchise, not just on the field in terms of winning games, although that's important, it's hard to do, but the way he's elevated Vanderbilt football into the culture of Nashville, I think has been enormous for that university. And because Nashville is full of stars, full of celebrities, full of big money businesses. And guess who celebrities and stars and big money business wants to be around? They want to be around stars too. And all that stuff was going on when Vanderbilt was just sort of off to the side and nobody paid much attention to it. Well, now people are paying attention to it, and they've elevated into that culture. And Pavia said in the summertime how important it was to just keep winning, to continue to be a part of that Nashville culture, and he has done it. And so I think all that adds into what's outstanding about a college football player, and I think Pavia deserves to be in New York.
Trevor Matich has been our guest on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donnie. He joins us every Tuesday, and he is brought to you by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, great stuff as always. Have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, guys.
615-737-1025. We will take your reaction to what Trevor had to say We also have some reaction on the upcoming matchup between Tennessee and Vanderbilt this weekend. 615-737-1025. This Thursday, the NFL Game of the Week, Chiefs and Cowboys at 3:30 on 1025 The Game. The NFL Game of the Week is presented by Circus Sportsbook Kentucky and Massaro in 12 South.
Josh, Diego Pavia was pretty effective last year, but he seems to have hit another level this year. What have you seen in his growth or his development over the past year?
Yeah, just another year of development, command of what they're doing offensively. Certainly has the ability to use his feet and make plays. He's throwing it extremely well. He's continued to get better throughout the course of the season and being efficient with football, and has created a bunch of big plays. But his ability to be a part of the run game, as well as a huge part of what they do offensively.
That was Tennessee coach Josh Heupel discussing Diego Pavia ahead of the Vols matchup against Vanderbilt at Neyland Stadium this weekend. Speaking of that game, you can root on Vanderbilt football this Saturday with 102.5 The Game at Germantown Pub, located at 708 Monroe Street in Nashville, starting at 2 o'clock. Win great prizes and cheer for Vanderbilt as they take on the Volunteers this Saturday at Germantown Pub. We'll get to some of your reaction. Another thing I noted, and Willie touched on this earlier, in terms of the tempo, the amount of plays these two teams like to run. Tennessee averages 73 offensive plays per game. Vanderbilt averages roughly 62. So a difference of roughly 11 per game. So a bit of a clash of styles in that aspect. But as Trevor said, both Joey Aguilar and Diego Pavia can throw the ball. Although if you ask Diego Pavia, as he said at the end of the game last week, a lot of people didn't think he could pass. But he can air it out, as you saw last weekend against Kentucky when he was hitting Trey Richardson for a couple of huge touchdowns. But let's get to your reaction, 615-737-1025. Here's an interesting one. One texter says, I'm anti-Pavia. Nothing to do with him at Vanderbilt. Nothing to do with him being at Vanderbilt. Rather, it has more to do with my dislike of the transfer portal and constantly changing eligibility rules. I know Pavia didn't start the movement, in quotes, but his name has always been at the top with the challenging of the JUCO transfer and extra seasons of eligibility. College football should not have a free agent system and should still be under the 5 years to play 4-year system. Transfer down divisions and be immediately eligible, transfer up or lateral and have to sit a year, and that's it. Not this play at 6 schools and 6 or 7 years junk. Just my 2 cents. Love the show.
I mean, listen, nobody wants it to be the way it is, but it's not the players' fault. I don't know why. I mean, you can't hate Pavia. It's the NCAA. They chose not to put in rules before they started letting all this stuff happen, or rules that were both beneficial to the player and the university. It was like they went from one end of the spectrum to basically the other end. It went from no, you can't transfer to yeah, you can transfer as many times as you want to. But now they've sort of reined it in, at least when you can transfer. But this is just the way of college sports nowadays, unless and until the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC choose to, do their own thing. This is the way it's going to continue to be. They may change some things here and there, but for the most part, the horse is out of the barn and you ain't getting that thing back in unless you break it down to a power 3 or 4 and y'all just do your own thing. So, but, I think a lot of that is sort of going by the wayside because a lot of this has to do with the COVID and, everything else. So a lot of that is starting to come to an end. And hopefully you won't see guys that are 24 or 25 years old still in college playing. And granted, it's a rule they're able to do. They found a loophole in it. So take advantage of it. But eventually, it's going to sort of regress back to what it had been prior to COVID.
At the same time, Willie, Dustin in Hopkinsville says, I kind of like it the way it is. It's leveled the playing field.
That it has.
It's been entertaining. I'm a great example. I might have sent that first text verbatim a couple years ago. I might have. But I can't be two-faced about it. I certainly enjoy that Vanderbilt has jumped on board and been effective evolving. They were late doing it, but they've look at the sports. Their women's soccer team is now in the final 8. Both men's and women's basketball ranked right now. Baseball perennially ranked. So they've evolved, and the athletic program is arguably as strong as it's ever been at one point from start to finish. We're not even getting into a lot of the other secondary sports that are always good, golf and tennis, etc. So it's working for Vanderbilt. I can't argue. I'm evolving with the times. I don't think I would have ever chose it, though, because I don't think you can put a price of a great college experience at 1 or 2 schools rather than 2 to 4 schools. And I would be in favor of age limits. I would.
Mm-hmm.
Willie, do I need to tap the sign again? I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make money. That's the NCAA way of life. Don't make me tap the sign.
but even Kirby Smart, who's probably got one of the higher payrolls going, he's got the highest stakes. He's expected to compete for the title every year. His point of, if you're out there for a check, you're not going to be successful. Not in college, but you certainly aren't going to be successful out of college if you're about the check. Life is not about the check. It especially at that age. It's about developing you as a person as well as a player. So there has to be a balance in there somewhere. And I like Kirby Smart saying that. That at least he's seeing signs that, yeah, you can make a lot of money, but you better be tough and you better still have that blue collar, that will to get better, compete, all of those things that are going to help you hopefully after your playing career is over.
Hair Metal Henry says, something tells me it's going to be close for most of the game, and then a really bad targeting call is going to change the momentum one way or the other.
Yeah, it could be.
Willie, let me ask you this question. As our resident Commodore, you are a proud alum of Vanderbilt University. And I know that Coach Willie likes to keep things in perspective. He's a one game at a time kind of guy, as we told Clark Lee yesterday. But is it hyperbole to say that this is the biggest game in Vanderbilt football history?
I think with the build up to it, it's I don't know. The game day, we had that discussion. I think you maybe asked a similar version of that question leading up to Missouri with game day there and the ability to sort of grab the spotlight and win when everybody is got you under the glare.
Yes.
This is right up there, I would say. But as Trevor pointed out, they need some forces to be working in their favor in addition to them winning the game for it to be next level. But I think you do have to try to at least prepare yourself if it doesn't work out around the country and this is the cherry on top of a 10-2, it's still going to be really meaningful, I would say. But biggest in history, I don't know. Like in hindsight, beating number one, the goalposts against Alabama, it's hard to top that. But I think you've got an argument in the build-up to this particular Vanderbilt-Tennessee game.
Heather Dinich on ESPN.com has her CFP Bubble Watch. I love Bubble Watch. She has Vanderbilt as her first team out in the SEC. She writes this, quote, "The Commodores could stay status quo this week, which means at number 14, they remain a long shot for an at-large bid. Punctuating their resume with a win against a ranked Tennessee is the first step, but they would also need multiple upsets ahead of them to get serious consideration. It's not inconceivable, as Miami can lose at Pitt, Oklahoma can suffer a third loss to LSU, Alabama can lose the Iron Bowl. None of it matters, though, without a win in Knoxville." That was Heather Dinich on Bubble Watch on ESPN.com. One texter says, "I agree with the first text. It certainly has gotten out of hand. All we wanted was the video game back, and instead we got players that transfer schools every week. Unfortunately, gone are the days of people staying and actually fighting for a spot. As an Alabama fan, I am very grateful that Ty Simpson stayed and waited his turn and developed."
It's D-May said it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going back.
No, it's not.
And I admire. I agree. Deep down in my heart, I don't like a lot about it. It's not. I don't think it's going to be great for the kids in a lot of cases. But I am coming around to, it's just the norm now. There is a huge sacrifice that I don't think the average 20-year-old who might be transferring in a given year realizes what you're giving up. It's so easy to say, well, I'm going over here and I'm getting X $1,000 more, so I'm doing it. And I haven't played as much over at school A, so I'm going to school B, and I'm going to make more money. That's a short-term thing. The fighting for the job thing has a value. I agree that the texter pointed out. And the value of being in an environment where you grow with a group of people around you that probably become your closest, tightest friends going forward. There is a price to be paid there, but we're not going back. We got to face the facts, and it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean,
Vanderbilt's planning to go 10-2. That wasn't happening in the old system.
No, it wasn't, and I think some people are not. Hell, Coach Saban wasn't used to it, and I don't know if he's still used to it. But
think about how many prominent
tweaks,
coaches.
I think Saban's good at throwing tweaks out there that
exactly.
I think are really, really some stuff that won't change everything back to the way it was, but maybe make the current system better And I hope that they continue to listen to him and try to figure out how to, little by little, evolve it so that it's not quite as crazy.
But it's not even. However they choose to change it, I think it's going to have to be in a way where there has to be a benefit for both parties in this. But I think what Saban and coaches like Saban has to understand, this is not the old West anymore. This is not the way they used to do things, and the way y'all had the market cornered. Y'all had a monopoly on everything. That's not anymore. You can't. They didn't broke up your little monopoly game. They did it. Now everybody can participate. And teams like Vanderbilt that hadn't been able to get individuals into their university, whether it be because academics, or they just didn't want to go to Vanderbilt, they didn't see any benefit in a sense. Now there is a huge benefit, because Vandy can pay just as much as anybody else can pay, and it's all legal.
615-737-1025. We will take your thoughts on Vanderbilt and Tennessee coming up this weekend. But coming up next, Predators GM Barry Trotz will join us for his weekly chat on DVD. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025. The Game, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. As always, we are fortunate to have Predators general manager Barry Trotz on the program every week during hockey season, and he joins us now. Hi, Barry. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good, thank you. You were quoted in the Tennessean earlier this week saying you needed more from your players, and you even used some colorful language to punctuate that point, which made the rounds on social media yesterday. So how did you feel watching your players perform the way they did last night in an 8-3 loss at home after challenging them publicly?
Obviously not good. I thought our group, and when I'll take a step backwards. I think on my interview, I did say that I put that on myself, the coach, and the players. So the tidbits that come out are generally on the players. But at the same time, I was disappointed. Obviously, getting scored on, 11 seconds in, that's been 2 games in a row where that happened. It's not anything that the players did or anything. That's just part of the game. Sometimes the game is very cruel when you're going through some tough times.
Barry, you have repeatedly said that the plan is in pen, but the path is in pencil. And I don't need to remind you of where your team is right now. You know that.
Yeah.
So has the time come? This is a 2-part question. Has the time come for you to adjust that path and start selling off assets as the season seemingly slips away? And if now is not the time, how much longer are you willing to wait?
Well, I think I will, on the first part of the question, absolutely. I think, we go into every season thinking that we are going to have, decent success. We've tried to fix our defense, got younger. That was the main thing that we were going to do. We started doing that last year so that we were a younger team this year, especially on the back end. Up front, we're still a little bit on the older side. I think where we are, the plan hasn't changed. It just changes the timeline and a little bit of the path. For everybody out there, I think everything is timing. You've got to go through the whole league. The whole league is sort of assessing what Nashville's doing, what other teams are doing. There's factors. It's not really fantasy, as I use the term fantasy hockey. There is some timelines with the salary cap and assets that have to come one way or the other. So our path and the timeline is probably getting adjusted based on our record, and as a management group and a general manager, I'm going to continue to try to build this hockey team to get younger. We tried to do that and start adding things to the cupboard, as I said. So everything's on the table, and I know people out there, everything from letting the coach go to moving assets right away, all that's really on the table, and we're going to have to assess all those things and make those decisions. But the path is to make our team younger, make our team a little bit faster and a little bit bigger, and that's not going to change. Just the timeline may get altered based on where we are and the demands of our situation, be it the players want or the situation that's out there in the league.
So you told ESPN in an article that was published today, I believe you spoke to Greg Wyshynski before the game yesterday, but you told him that the next, quote, 7 or 8 games are going to be a good indicator, end quote, if the time has arrived to start having tough conversations with veteran players. So that puts you a couple weeks away. Should we hold you to that timeline?
Well, I think it gives you a parameter. You're going to now be, almost 30 games in, and I think you're going to know where you are. I think we know we're in a tough spot right now. I think for players who have certain situations, they may say, "Listen, I'm getting older. I want to, move to another place." That may happen, and that usually happens around just before Christmas or right after Christmas. So that was only the inference that I was trying to make. Is that seems to be the time frame of being in this business a long time, that people reach out either in your own camp or their agent's camp. Hey, I'm not playing enough, or this situation's not fitting me right. That seems to be the time frame that a lot of that happens. So that's all that was when I tried to give a little time frame in terms of games.
Barry Trotz is with us. Barry, UC Saros was pulled last night after allowing 5 goals on 16 shots in roughly 21 minutes of game action. Since the start of last season, Saros has posted a 900 save percentage or better in just 34 of his 76 starts. That's a percentage of under 45%. I know how much faith you have in Saros. That's why you signed him to the contract that you signed him to.
Yeah.
But how concerned are you about his performance over the past season in the quarter?
You're looking at some of that rollback, but I also always look at how are the goals going in. I mean, the one goal against Colorado, he probably might want back, but I don't know if I can fault him on too many goals last night. I mean, when guys are coming from behind the net and passing it into the slot, and the guys coming downhill and one timing, it is very difficult for any goalie in any league to have a high save percentage against chances like that, and especially some of the chances that came off of bodies and what have you. There is a randomness to it, but at the same time, anytime that I think the goaltending probably in the last 5-6 years has gone down. And this would be a Mitch Korn question, as you know, Adam. The goaltending save percentage for goaltenders in the league has come down. I couldn't give you the exact percentage, but it's come down in the last 5 or 6 years because the goal scorers and the way goals are scoring, everybody has 5 or 6 really high-end guys, and they're more active than ever before. So it's making it harder and harder for the goaltenders to have those insane save percentages that they used to have in the years when we could clutch and grab and tackle people around the net. So, but yeah, it always is. It always is that you want to see players either maintain a level of play at their numbers, be it a goal scorer or the numbers of a defenseman in terms of their metrics, and a goaltender in terms of their save percentage and their goals against average. So those are all, you always look at them, and when they get out of whack, they always become concerning.
I hear what you're saying, Barry, about maybe the save percentage around the league declining, but I'm just looking at Saros' save percentage since the 2022-2023 season. He had a 919 save percentage that season. Over the past 3 years, that's dropped from 906 to 896 to 889. So while I acknowledge that, hey, it could dip a little bit, that is a precipitous drop. So that's where I'm asking you about the concern. It's not just 919 to 909. It's 919 to 889.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I am. You always look at that. That's what I was saying, is that you look at it, and then you also have to look at how we're playing in front of them as well. And, like I say, if I'm looking at the Colorado game, his save percentage in that game was outstanding, and the saves that he made were outstanding. And then I look at the chances we gave up the other night against Florida, and like I say, most goalies are going to have a very low save percentage with the chances that we gave up and the randomness of a couple of the goals. So, yeah, it is on my radar, no question. That's why I think in the past, there's a number of goaltenders that can move teams. Colorado's number one team in the National Hockey League in terms of goals against. And Scotty Wedgwood, when we were playing in front of him, he didn't have a lot of success because that might have been us at that point. And he's playing under a real structured Colorado team right now, and they're not giving up much. And his save percentage is very high, and he's the same goaltender. So I believe that the confidence comes from the team in front of you, and we haven't given Juice enough confidence at the same time because we've been a little bit random back there.
Barry Trotz is with us, Predators general manager. And Barry, you had a great question from a couple of listeners who basically were saying, if the team is going to struggle, I'd rather watch a lot of young players play, and they kind of want them all thrown in there right now. I'm sure you talk about this. You have weekly said your plan is to move some of these young guys, but they're all at different ages. So tell us about that process of when you start moving forward. What's the right amount of, or as you weigh playing in Milwaukee versus throwing them into the NHL when the team is struggling?
So I think it sometimes those young guys can come in and they're so excited that actually the room can feed off of that. At other times you just don't want to, young guys that come in and sort of get that feeling like they're underwater a little bit. So with us right now, a lot of people have to understand that you have a 23-man roster, and if you have certain guys that are on IR, you can carry up to 23 as long as there's guys that are injured, unable to play, or on IR. So you can bring them in. If you look what we've done, obviously with Smith and LaRue out, LaRue was coming in to play, and so he got hurt and he's sidelined. So we've been actually carrying 8 defensemen, 2 goalies, and 12 forwards. And so we've been at the 22 rate in terms of healthy bodies, but 2 of them are defensemen. So my goal would be to probably look at seeing if we can find a situation where maybe a young forward or a defenseman do a little bit of a flip flop with maybe another team, and allow some of our young guys to come. I know in the brief stance here in the next little while, you're not going to see the veteran call up guys coming up to Nashville. What you're going to see is the rookie first game in the league guys. The next guy is probably, Kemmel was up. We were hoping to see him in a game in Sweden. He didn't play. So my whole thought process is if Andrew doesn't have him in the lineup, then I would rather him play in Milwaukee, knowing that I can get him on the flight. Andrew wants to put him into a game, he will go into a game. But I also believe that, we had a situation with a guy like Svechkov who got off and scored a goal, which he must feel great because he's gone and it's been weighing on his mind. There's a good example of that second-year player struggling a little bit, thinking it might be a little bit easier, and then actually found it harder, and maybe not harder physically, but harder mentally. And so hopefully he got through that a little bit. But, he was in a situation where maybe we would have swapped him out and brought a winger. But you're going to see in the next, 60 some games, you're going to see Schaefer and a Kemmel and O'Hara and probably David Edstrom and players like that. And then obviously Tanner Molendyk and Ryan Ufko's had a really, really good year this year. Coming up and playing games for us. It's hard to get our defense up right now with 8 healthy defensemen in our lineup right now. So that's my job in the next, next few months is to make sure that we get some opportunities for all our young guys and be back on the same plan that we've had for a while, that we needed to get game experience for some of our young players. Schaefer missed a whole year last year. I really felt that we'd get to about this point where he'd get about 20, 25 games into the American Hockey League. His recovered from his upper body injury. There's no, I'll say, any doubt that he's ready. And then you bring him up and you give him opportunity. So opportunity for all the young people. I think that's what's going to be exciting for our fans, is you're going to see some of the young players that are coming. I mean, that's part of the process. I mean, we haven't had a great last year wasn't great, and we haven't had a great start here. And we're, especially up front, we're a little bit older. So I think it's going to be refreshing to get some of our young guys into the lineup soon.
I'm curious what your experience has been, and most of your teams made the playoffs, so you haven't been associated with a lot of teams that are in this spot. But I'm curious, your conversations with Andrew Burnett about veteran players, like they're aware, right? That it's not going the way they wanted to. They were hoping to be better, and it's the reality setting in. They've got a big way to climb. Something has got to change here quick. What are the discussions like in the meantime, while all of this is unfolding slowly with your big picture plan to get the most out of the group that you have right now?
Well, I think the group, once you're in the dressing room, I mean, it's the group, it's the coaches and the group, and they've got you've seen us when we buy in into a game plan or a game, be it like the Colorado game or the first game in Sweden. We've owned teams for the most part. We just haven't been able to find the back of the net as easy as we'd like. But we have one of those games, and you say, okay, we can build on it. We are a little bit reluctant to build on it, and it's that inconsistency that it doesn't allow us to sustain any joy. You can see 1-0 loss. I call it 1-0 loss because empty net.
Yeah. And there's a weight, right? There's a weight that you feel after a loss like that.
Yeah. You play a really good game, and you go, I can't believe we're walking away from this game not getting at least a point. And that you put in a lot of effort and get no results. It does weigh on you, and that's happened to us more than I'd like. And what happens when you aren't getting the results, you tend to have, I'll say, not a little cheat in your game, but the belief in it doesn't, it doesn't really galvanize it. It sort of, it pulls apart again, and then you got to try to bring it back and glue it together again. It seems like every game. So the thing about playing is competing together and finding joy within in the battle, the grind, all the stuff. The game is, as much as it is physical, it's a mental game. And I know the guys are, as I say, they're hearing the noise. I hear the noise. Andrew hears the noise. And that's hard. I mean, you go home after a game last night, and when you're owning it, I mean, there's not a lot of sleep had last night because you're trying to fix it. You're trying because you care, and we have a lot of people that care. So in our organization, and we're trying to fix it. And sometimes when we fix one thing, it's like whack-a-mole. You whack one mole and another one pops up. So, but we do have a plan as an organization, and it is to continue to get younger, continue to develop our players, continue to draft, and if there's movement of players, our job is to get assets for them. So all that is out there, and everything's in play. Because it's fluid, and that's why when asked, is the coaching situation or a player situation, I'm trying to answer them as honestly as I can, with respect to all the players and our fans and everybody involved. And some people run with it in different directions, and we can't control that. But I think you know me. I care about this hockey club. I want this hockey club to win, and it's, we're very competitive, and we'll be in a position where, if we're not going to be good, then maybe we're going to have to go through some pain and continue to build this through the draft and continue to do this, the way, in the long term is to get the high picks, to develop those high picks and build a really good pool. And because we've got great ownership, we've got a great city, we've got some great people in the organization, and I think we're a destination. So we're going to do that. And there's, unfortunately, we haven't been here very often, so it really is painful because, like you say, I've been in the playoffs a long time in my career. And when you're not, it is really painful, and we're competitive people, and that's the hard part, is that we haven't been here for a long time.
Barry, real quick, when you contemplate, I mean, the choice may be made for you. If the team just doesn't do well, you're going to have to go in that direction. It's what you have to do. Are you confident? Because Adam and I were looking at a study, taking a look at full rebuilds where you go across the board. It can take 7-8 years at times, sometimes longer if you don't do it well, sometimes a little shorter if you're fortunate. But are you confident that because you guys have already built a foundation of a farm system, that if you have to go in that direction, it could be somewhat on the quicker end as opposed to really breaking it all the way down and taking as long as some of these have taken for some teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And Willie, you know this. We're trying. We've seen that. We've done the analyzing of different ways of teams have built their team, and there's no perfect way. You got to have a little luck on the way, but we felt that we still had some good pieces that we could, build our prospect pool, move some players that were aging on us, try to stay relevant. We ended up with what I call a gap in terms of the middle class and some of our ages, and we had some really young players that we drafted, and my goal was to take that little bit older gap that I knew that we're going to be, I'll say, moving the needle for us, and trying to get younger so that next class of players would be in a little bit more of that age class of the younger players, so that core is coming in a little bit more together, and we maybe don't have that long sort of rebuild to be where we want to get to. So yes, all those you're correct in your statement, and that's why the path, I always say, is in pen, because our path has been to build a stable of good players, and then try to hit on a couple of game changers, and then work the trade routes and the free agency as best we can, which you see free agency is not what it used to be now. So, that's why it's always a little bit fluid.
Barry, before we let you go, I want to give you the opportunity to respond to a report that I saw floating around social media today. Frank Saravalli, insider, he worked for TSN, among other places. He had a clip on his show, and the quote that made the rounds was, quote, this is from Frank: "I've talked for weeks about the environment around the Nashville Predators is the most toxic in the NHL from top to bottom," end quote. Your response?
My response is, I talked to my captain. I saw that today too, and I actually talked to a couple of our key people, and they sort of chuckled at that. They thought that was not very accurate, but everybody's I'm going to say everybody has their own opinion, and Frank's not in our room, and he's not downstairs, and I know what toxic is, and I don't feel we're there. So I probably disagree with him, but his insiders and whoever's telling him that, I'd love to come to talk to me about it because I don't see it.
Barry Trotz has been our guest on D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick. He joins us every week during hockey season. Barry, thank you so much for your time as always. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We'll catch up next week.
All right, take care, guys.
615-737-1025. We will react to what Barry Trotz had to say. You can as well. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick 1025. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingen here with you. Once again, thank you to Barry Trotz for joining us as he does every week. We have some reaction on our phone lines. You can get in on it as well. 615-737-1025. Let's start with Trent. Trent, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I'll try to keep this real swift. I was born and raised in Hendersonville. I've been a Preds fan for a very long time. Seen the highest of highs. Unfortunately, I think we're at the lowest of lows. It feels very disrespectful to Barry Trotz's legacy, because I think a lot of people would agree that he's a very beloved man just for what he did for this franchise. And he's lucky that social media is not what it is now. Back when he was coaching, I think a lot of people would have been harsher on him. But I think that he was put in a situation where he was in over his head, and I think that they brought him in as a nostalgia hire. Maybe I'm wrong, but at what point do we start looking above Barry Trotz? For example, Sean Henry. You know, somebody controls all these hirings and this chronic mediocrity, and Sean Henry's been here since the early 2010s, and I just want to see what your take is. If Trotz and Brunette were out tomorrow, who's the next person in line calling the shots? Is it Sean Henry? Is there someone above him? We've got to get this team somewhere back on track because, like I said, this is the lowest of lows. Thanks for taking my call. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Trent. Willie, why don't you answer Trent's question?
Well, it's unprecedented. The team has been around since 1998. 1997 is when they hired David Boyle and Barry Trotz to scout. So there really hasn't been, there hasn't been a situation where there's been a lot of turnover to kind of see what happens. And now the ownership is in the process of changing. So it is something that we really haven't seen other than the passing of the torch from David Boyle to Barry Trotz. I think patience has been something that the Predators organization, for the most part, has been known for, especially relative to other teams. And so I don't think that's going to change. If you heard Barry Trotz there, I think what's been overlooked is that I think Barry Trotz realized that at some point when he took the reins, that the guys at the top of the roster were going to age. He hasn't mortgaged any of the future. I think I would be more on the side of the caller had they gone more into trading future assets to try to win last year and this year, building off of the surprisingly good season, I think 2 years ago. I think that's what sort of, took the plan in pencil, or, the pathway in a different line on the pencil, right? Because I think he thought when he took over, they might have to really dip right away before they could be good again. And lo and behold, they hit some right notes and they overachieved, and they went equally as poor last year. But the net result is, I think if you'd have asked him on day one, what's the roster going to look like in about 3 years, I think he would tell you it could very well look somewhat similar to how it looked. Maybe not this extreme at the bottom of the league, but I think all along in the last 3 years, would you agree, Adam, what they have done is they have been building slowly a prospect pool. Now, the question is, have they drafted well? Have they developed well? Those questions haven't been answered yet. But at least from a maneuvering standpoint, from a GM, you could see what the plan was, right?
You nailed it
in the long term.
You nailed it on the prospect pool. And there are intriguing players in that group, like Brady Martin or Tanner Mollendijk or Riker Lee or whoever. The problem is that none of those players seem to project, based on what people who know these things are saying, none of those players seem to project as the type of player who is going to change the fortunes of the franchise.
Right. And so that is, again, where I think you need a little luck. And I think it's luck combined with a really good eye for talent. And some of the prospect pool was drafted before Barry Trotz took over, some after. And it remains to be seen. You're right. And you have to do it without picking top 5, which is where you're going to get most of the guys that are the big difference makers. They hope Brady Martin is the first piece. They may get another crack at it the way it's going. They're going to have a lot of ping pong balls or whatever that 4-number numerical system is that you call it. It's going that way. But I think the one I asked him, I think, is the important part. Adam, I don't think anybody really would enjoy signing up for 7 or 8 years of a full break it down rebuild. There's going to be some lean times in there. You hope that they have already laid the groundwork for a little bit of a quicker one, even if they don't have the special players in the system right now, which we still don't know. Maybe they get 1, maybe they get 2 from this pool of 10 or 12 guys that they're excited about on some level. And then you pick high for another year or 2, and maybe then you get the crown jewels that they need. You need a little bit of luck, and you've got to have some great scouting.
Let's go to Ryan quickly on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com. Ryan, go ahead.
Willie, I gotta say, I think it's the skating and the passing on the Preds. I went to the game last night, and they're just so inferior to these other teams, like the Vancouver game was an example. The game last night was an example. Me personally, I don't think they're aggressive. The days of putting the puck behind the net and waiting for your offense to set up are long gone. Like, you have to be aggressive and put the defense on their heels. The days of skating down the ice and passing it back to your defensemen are long gone. I mean, look at the Lightning. Look at the Panthers. Like, they are aggressive. They're going to the defense aggressively. I mean, I would trade Yossi and Ryan O'Reilly this year. I mean, they're depreciating assets. I'd love to get your take on it, Willie.
Thanks, Ryan.
Well, I think, Adam, you would agree that speed and playmaking is lacking for this team. I think you're hoping that, and look, they're running out of time, right? They could play really well from now until the end of the year, and it still wouldn't be good enough to climb the amount of spots you've got to climb.
I think they've run out of time. I don't think there's. I don't think there's any runway.
It would be
left.
miraculous.
Yes,
right. It would be right. 16-0-2 wasn't really what we saw. They did that. This team hasn't shown numerically, et cetera. And so Ryan's point of, if their guard is down a little, like it was last night, you see what has been happening to them. They can't talent their way on a tough night into a win. So that's what you're seeing. It can be better than it has been, but not good enough to really make a dent. So I think you're hearing in Barry Trotz's voice, he's prepared to go in that direction. He's got a little bit of time. I thought it was intriguing, Adam, that he said, when you get around Christmas time is when teams start looking around and saying, okay, here are what our needs are. You start to really assess, what's out there. And maybe in another month or two, some of the young guys give you a little more sense of how they're coming along in Milwaukee. So it's not going to be this overnight thing. What I don't know will happen is if they get to a point where they might want to do some sort of shakeup with a coach or a bunch of call-ups, something like that. But I think it is a process. But could you sense, I think Barry Trotz does see that it's moving in a pretty clear direction right now.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your reaction to our interview with Barry Trotz, and we'll wrap up the show coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick 1025. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Preds Insiders is coming up next. Chase McCabe filled in capably for Willie Donick today. So more hockey talk coming up next with me and Chase from 6 to 7, immediately following DVD. Tomorrow we have a shortened program from 3 to 5 because the Predators do play in Detroit. 6 o'clock puck drop, 5 p.m. pregame. Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow will join us at 4 o'clock. We'll have Take It to the Bank 2 days early because we don't have a show on Thursday or Friday. We'll also do silly underdog picks as well tomorrow at 4:20. So be listening for your chance to win. More reaction to our Barry Trotz interview. Ryan in Nashville has a bit of a screed here. You know how I feel about screeds or tomes, but I'll read what Ryan has to say. He said, "Got news for you, Barry. It's not working. Strip it down and rebuild the franchise from the ground up. Look at the Sharks, Hawks, and Habs now. Also, Adam, we had a goalie that could put up good numbers, and they traded him to the Sharks for a below-average goalie, at best a third-line center, and Tanner Molendyke." And then Ryan in Nashville follows with, "The diehards will gladly sign up for a full rebuild." By the way, since November 1st, Yaroslav Askarov 7-1 with a 147 goals against average and 959 save percentage for the Sharks. But let's focus on that last part. The diehards will gladly sign up for a full rebuild.
The trade is incorrect, by the way. That's it. He said so. Magnus Krona was sort of the throw-in goalie.
David Edstrom
is, and the pick that they used, I think, was
Riker
Riker
Lee. Yes.
Yeah.
But I get I get the point.
Well, I get his point. And Askarov, definitely, you got to give him his due. He's starting to win. The Sharks are doing well. I'm curious how that goes. I mean, that would be ahead of schedule if that comes together. But so the point of they'll sign up for the full rebuild.
Yes.
You just never want it to take any longer than it has to, right? I think I would love to hear the fatigue level of some of those fan bases. I've been to some games here recently in San Jose. I mean, there's nobody in the building. That they had to really stomach it, and they're still not out of it yet. But you can see the pieces that look like they're pretty impressive.
And I used to do this in my former life. I used to do Predators fan surveys at the end of every season. And I remember back in 2022, I did a survey, and let me pull it up because there was a question in there that I think resonates now. The question I asked was, would you support a full-scale rebuild if it meant picking number 1 in the draft at least once? 62% of respondents said yes, and this was in 2022. So I'm curious what that percentage would be if I asked that same question today. Now, I know that being the worst team in the league does not guarantee you the number 1 overall pick, but I did add that caveat in there. Would you support a full-scale rebuild if it meant picking number 1 in the draft at least once? 62% of people said yes. This was 3 years ago.
It's a good reference point because I think in 2022 you're still a little closer to the days where the team was competing for division titles.
That was after the sweep against the Avalanche in the first round of the playoffs.
Right.
For context.
And so what's happened since then is I do think they have done a pretty good job with those trades that you mentioned and some of the filling of the draft picks of at least giving themselves a more higher picks, more top 30, top 60 picks. And you could you can only hope that they've done a good job with those picks. Like he said, so the caller, I guess, is a scout or the texter that thinks David Edstrom is a third-line center. That might end up being the case. He may not be an NHL center. I don't know. But he's only 20. We have to wait and see, right? I think a couple years ago, they were hoping Fedor Svechkov would turn into a pretty good center. His growth has stunted, right? Is he going to end up being Phil Tomasino, or will he figure it out and be a piece of a good team down the road? I guess my point is, I think where I sit now, I would be a little more comfortable with the rebuild because they have laid the groundwork. Their cupboard isn't bare, right? Whenever the Avalanche have to rebuild, and they will someday, their cupboard is going to be completely bare. And why wouldn't it be? When the Blackhawks did, their cupboard was totally bare because they had gone all in to try to win as long as they could. Tampa Bay is another example. They might be at the end of a long run. That's going to be a tough one, but it'll be worth it because they've won a lot. I think the Predators, the nuance is hopefully your rebuild wouldn't take as long, because the last 3 or 4 years they've built up, I think, a pool that will serve them well to fill some holes so that you can be competitive quicker.
I asked Barry Trotz about UC Saros. UC Saros had a rough night last night. UC Saros statistically has been declining over the past few years. And although I acknowledge that the environment he was in over these past few years, or has been in, has not been great, the drop off, as I mentioned to Barry, and I know save percentage is just one aspect of it, but the drop off in save percentage, his peak was in that COVID shortened season. He had a 927 save percentage. He played at an MVP level in the second half of that season. So since that season, 2020, 2021, his save percentage has gone from 927 to 918 to 919, so up a tick, down to 906, 896, 889. As I said to Barry, that is a precipitous drop off. The quality start percentage.
But you're not putting the perspective on it, Adam. That those two of the years you mentioned, he was phenomenal to get to 918 or 919. He was top 6 in the Vezina for 4 straight years, and then the last 2 years are the issue. I would confine it to that. I don't think this is some spiraling downhill. I think the last 2 years are legitimate concern, and I do think the environment has been not so good. The goal support has been among the worst. But all that being said, I would look. You know me, and you know how my personal thing of what just happened with UC Saros.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of UC Saros. I was a long time before that. I believe in the person. I believe in the dedication. I believe in his unique talent. But I'd be lying to you if I consider and tell you he's playing well. He's not playing as well as he has been, and I don't think they're night in and night out are executing quite as well as they were in the first 8 to 10 games of the stuff that we talked about a lot. Defending better. It's been a little bit more hit or miss here in these last few games. And of course, you're picking on him right after, his worst performance statistically wise.
Well,
where he got lit up for 5.
I wouldn't say I'm picking on him. As you said, it's been since the start of last season. And I know you reference the same numbers I do. He has made
right, but you went back 2 more years where he finished in the top 6 of the Vezina and included that. It's really 2 seasons.
Okay, well, either way, I acknowledge your point. Either way, since the start of last season, if we can focus on since the start of last season, you look at the same numbers I do, Willie. He has made a quality start 43 times in 76 opportunities. That's under 57%. A quality start, by the way, is when a goalie saves more goals than expected. So that means in just over half of the games he's played, he has saved more goals than he should have based on the quality that he is facing. That's not good. I referenced the 900 save percentage, which is also not good since the start of last season. So, just with the way things have been going since he signed the contract, and this is the first season of the contract. Last season, he was still playing on the other contract. But I think Predators fans are well within their right to be concerned about how things are trending for UC Saros. If you want to isolate it to the past season and a quarter, that's fine.
Agreed. Got to be a concern.
Let's see. Wes in Hermitage. Wes in Hermitage says, fun fact, talking Vandy with Willie is great. Talking Preds with Willie is something. I'm not exactly sure what that means. What that means. Let's see here. One texter says, what good is the number 1 pick sitting in Milwaukee for 6 years? I'm not sure a number 1 overall pick is going to sit in Milwaukee for 6 years, and Brady Martin is ineligible for the American Hockey League right now. I think it's a commentary on Trotz's philosophy of overcooking prospects versus giving them the opportunities almost immediately in the NHL.
Well, but they haven't. How many picks go right into the NHL that aren't in the top 5? We've talked about that.
Not too many.
Not too many. It's 3 a year. Maybe.
Well, how many first round picks made opening night rosters? 5 this season? 5. 6?
But that's not the thing. How many are still there? 2.
3.
The kid from Pittsburgh has been the one surprise.
Right? Is Misa still in San Jose?
I think so.
and Schaefer from New York.
There you go. So there's 3.
Yes.
That's
But-
about average. Would you say?
Yeah. Well, it was a full show. Great participation as always, everybody. We will be back tomorrow, just a 2-hour program tomorrow, which is our final program of the week because we're off for Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Jonathan Hutton will join us at 4 o'clock. We will have silly underdog picks at 4:20. We'll take it to the bank at some point during the show because we got to wrap up the week, but we'll all be in different locations as well. Willie, of course, will be in Detroit with the Predators. Derek will be in New York City with family. I'll be right here. So it's going to be a national program. We're crossing state lines, but we will catch up with you all tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful day. I love you. The team loves you. You hear that music. Don't you leave. Don't you forget about us because we will not forget about you. See you tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's a abbreviated show as well tomorrow.
2 hours.
2 hours, people, but you're going to get the best 2 hours you ever got from us. So peace.